사실은
Hello, welcome to a glorious spring day in the Great White North. Today I'm going to talk to you about this new TRN planar called the Azure Dragon. Let us just do a little what it comes with. I mean, I think the TRN is really, they're calling this their flagship flat panel driver, planar. And it comes with this cardboard box, says TRN, it's hard to see. The packaging and the unboxing is nice. It's, you know, so little, whole bunch of, so the cable, and I'll talk about that in a bit. All your ends, 3.5, 2.5, and 4.4 balanced. Comes in there, and then also you're gonna get the extra nozzles, and so you'll get a little metal plate. And I don't know if you can actually see this. You can actually. Can you see the top ones on how short they are? And that's interesting. We'll talk about that. So that's the transparency nozzles, and then there's reference ones that come on it, and the atmospheric immersion nozzles. And I want to show you something else. So can you see in the back of that, in the atmospheric immersion, how small the bore diameter gets versus the top ones, okay? And you'll notice something else is that there is no filters or foams in these ones yet. All right, after I was so rudely interrupted by my phone. Oh. Okay, probably leather. It's a nice little case that TRN provides. Man, does it stink. If you like sniffing glue, this is the case for you. Moving on. That comes with typical TRN, I think it's called the red chain, modular cable. Kind of looks like a copper and kind of like a silvery cable, 4-strand. Not bad. It is a little tangly, I will admit, and comes with nice ear hooks. They call this the 2-pin S cable, and it's kind of funny. It was my first feedback to TRN was show the pictures with the cable on it, because without the cable on it, it kind of has that, you know, QDC style kind of thing sticking out, right? May not be the best looking without the cable on, but as soon as you put this nice little cable on, it kind of really purdies it up, right? Fancies it up. You can see the shell. It's called the Azure Dragon for a reason. Kind of looks like a alien dragon egg. That's the way I'm calling it. And my first critique and feedback for TRN, if you're calling this a flagship, you see how the very top kind of has the same kind of design element, but it isn't in blue. And it would have been nice to see that little Y at the very top in blue like the rest, but that's pretty much it. The shells themselves are a magnesium alloy, magnesium aluminum alloy. And there says Azure Dragon left and right on, hello, right there on the side, which is a nice touch too. A lot of things TRN learned from the conch, and one of them was these nozzles. And we'll talk about that in a bit. For sure. So I think when it comes to nozzles, TRN is really smart. I think they're kind of ahead of the game, and I'll tell you why. Inside of this is the 2nd generation dual magnetic planar. Uses a N52 magnets, very powerful magnets, 14.6 millimeter planar. Now, let's talk about those nozzles. Actually, let's talk about the Azure Dragon for a second. Spoiler alert, I do like this, I'm going to say it, planar. If you've ever watched any of my videos before, you kind of know that I'm not a big IEM planar fan. And I'm going to compare it also later to the nice HCK F1 Pro. So I typically, when I buy stuff, like I paid about a little over $100 US for this one, and it came with a nicer cable as well. It came with 2 cables at that price, at that sale price, and I kept that as my reference planar that I would compare against. So it's now going to be taken over by the Dragon, and we'll get into sound, why that is in a bit. So the origins of the Azure Dragon, right? The Azure Dragon. Hold on. Let me put on my commentator voice. The Azure Dragon, also known as the Changlong is one of the 4 symbols of the Chinese zodiac. It originated from the ancient people's symbolic interpretation of the stars and represents the Eastern god associated with the Emperor Ta and the 7 constellations of the East. In the Bag, I'm sorry if I screwed that up, it corresponds to Zen and Un. And in the 5 elements, it represents wood. It symbolizes the Xiaoyang in the 4 symbols and the spring in the 4 seasons. Okay. I'm not sure where dragon comes from in this. I mean, if it's there's wood elements, there's 5 elements. It's supposed to represent wood and spring. I'm just going to call it the alien dragon egg, personally. Magnificent display awakened by the giant dragon. Okay, there's more. The TRN Azure Dragon design is inspired by the texture of the Azure Dragon's head. Oh, here we go. Showcasing unparalleled grandeur and power. Its unique appearance resembles an awakened dragon in the world of music. The curves and lines of the earphone are elegant and smooth, like a dragon's neck, showcasing a mysterious and majestic temperament. I don't know, I think a dragon's neck is all scaly and spiky and shit, so I can't see it. In addition, the details and textures of the surface of the earphones invoke a toughness and mystery of the dragons, giving people a strong visual impact and shock. There you be. Pretty cool design elements. I kind of saw it and I was like, okay, that's cool. I like it. Some people looked at it and it's like, that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. And it's like, I'm cool. I like it. I can dig it. Gets into my artsy side. And there you go. That's enough about that. Now let's talk about these nozzles here for a second. So there's the short one, the transparency and the reference and the atmospheric immersion are the 2 longer ones. The short little guys, right there, have the most frequency energy, high frequency energy. The longer reference ones it has a slight drop in the top end on when you're graphing, and I'll pull up a graph here of the 3 different nozzles, stock form, and it does do a little bit of a -2, -3 dB around the 6 to 7K sibilance area dip, which is quite nice if you're sensitive to sibilance. And we'll talk about planar timbre in a bit as well. And the longest, again, the second set, the atmospheric immersion, that's the one with the narrow bore on the inside, has the biggest nozzle change. And here, where from about 2.5K, you can see it drops about -5 dB in the high frequency area. So again, I would say there's, in stock form, really kind of 2 tunings with the 3 nozzles provided. And I think, and I'm going to give kudos to credit here for TRN, learn that changing the bore diameter size is like using narrow bore tips. The strategy works. And I wish SimGot would actually do that as well to tame the upper mids. You can do only so much with filters, and we're going to talk about that. Here's some feedback for TRN. So would have been nice to actually have 4 sets of nozzles, and the 3 that you provided, one with a short one with the longer, and those, you know, call them the same: transparency, reference, atmospheric immersion. And provide a fourth nozzle and make it, again, a longer one. And my recommendation would have been a medium density foam inside, 5 by 5 millimeter, and a 250 level nozzle filter. And they can put one underneath the screen or on top. It really doesn't matter, or provide extra ones. That would be really nice. And again, I will show you what happens when, and I graphed and listened to, I don't know, 12 different variants of that to dial it in for me. And that's quite lovely. Now, let's talk about that shell for a second. Where did I put my, I didn't put it here somewhere. Yes, I did. Now, that shell is CNC machine shell, and I think this is where some people are going to have some problems, and I'm going to tell you why. So, I do talk about nozzle length, shape, and angle. And that does play a pretty massive part into fitment for most people, including myself. And it also plays a massive part into how the sound's going to travel into your ear canal. Now, let me show you. This is a plunge audio IM. And you can see that the nozzle goes, you know, up and then angled back in. And when that goes into your ear, it actually hits the direction of your ear canal. And if we did a comparison now to, right, so they're both facing the same way. Now you can see that the plunge audio is angled in, and the Azure Dragon TRN is angled forward and the other direction. When you're CNC, when you CNC machine an IM shape, you can do kind of whatever you want. And so for me, this, and I think is a slip up, maybe, that the angle and the shape of the shell, the Azure Dragon, people are going to have fitment issues. And so for me, I did my normal. I threw on my pen on. What is this one? This one's right, so put it on there. So I put on my pen and lacquer tips. I really like those tips lately. And I put on the bigger one that I normally use, or a medium, and put it in, and I got a really good seal. But this is kind of what happens with this shell shape and the way this nozzle angle is. So it kind of, you can see it here. So this is now with a smaller tip. And I'll explain this in a sec here. So when I put the bigger tip in, it was sitting out further because of the way that nozzle angle is. It doesn't allow it to go straight in and up into your ear cavity, at least with my ear anatomy. And I typically have no fitment issues with 95% of IMs that I try. So, so I'm spending a bit of time on this just to understand, because this will affect so many people's different perception of this IM on how they hear it. And I got a couple quick suggestions and fix. So first of all, so if you used a bigger tip, it'd be sitting out of your thing. Now, this also changes too with the shorter nozzles. And so, which is kind of good that TRN did this. They used a shorter nozzle and a longer nozzle. So for some people, the shorter nozzle might be better, but for most applications, and especially because of the way the nozzle is kind of angled away from your inner ear, I think the longer nozzles are a better idea. So let's just put it this way, with a bigger tip, what I normally use, it doesn't work very well. And you can tell that when you put it in your ears and you actually push down on it. And even with now using a smaller tip, and here I'm using the Divinus Velvet tips, worked really well in this application. I used a smaller tip and they go in quite deep. It's nice, it's very comfortable. But if you were to push down on the bottom of it and kind of get it to the correct angle of your inner ear, you get a different sound perception completely. Like the bass changes dramatically. So my best suggestion is to use a smaller ear tip, use a longer nozzle, and get it as deep as you possibly can. Even with that, though it's pretty comfortable wiggling around, it still likes to wiggle itself loose, because again, it's not at that back angle that it sits in more comfortably and at the right angle. So enough about the shell. But it'll play a really big role in how you hear this IM and its bass especially. So now let's talk about that little short nozzle just for another sec here. That transparency nozzle, I think it'll make even fitment more difficult for some and better for others. So I already said that, didn't I? I did. Let's talk about the tuning changes just for a sec between the short transparency nozzle, the reference nozzle, which is the now longer one, and the atmospheric immersion one with the narrow bore. So transparency, shorter nozzles, if you're leaving it stock like this, lovers and the fitment is good for you. What you'll get is something for the lovers of the upper mids and treble details. Well, if you like this kind of tuning, you'll love it very much. The bass is fast and tight, but it tends to get washed out with the upper registers. And again, I found that more of a fitment issue than anything else about the bass. And again, because of those short little nozzles, you needed to angle it, like push it literally in a different angle to get a proper, how I think it was supposed to be tuned. The reference nozzle. So this, on paper, it's not far off from the longer nozzle, but it allowed me to put a smaller tip in and get a deeper ear fit. And what happened there, not so much on paper, but in ear, the changes, I got a better 3D kind of sense of stage with better height, tonality similar in the vocals and instruments, but it has a touch more weight because I was getting more bass. And it was really good for, or better for, listening at low volume levels. So that was quite nice. Now let's talk about that really skinny bore atmospheric immersion. I think it's more mid-centric tuning, like vocals adds, you know, more emphasis, and especially on the weight. But strings kind of lost some of their bite. The stage definitely got narrower. I think this nozzle would be good for treble sensitive people. And it added probably the most sense of bass presence. And it was probably the best for high volumes in these three stock tunings. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, I would love to see a fourth set of nozzles. And I would love to see kind of the modified reference. I would personally have called it the balanced nozzle. And I used a 200 mesh filter and a 5x5 millimeter medium density foam from this SIMGOT EA 500 kit. So with this tuning, again, here's a graph of what that looks like. And it gives a really, I mean, on paper, this is a gorgeous curb. If it was dynamic driver, and guess what? On this planar, it does sound like that as well. Really, really nice. best bass for me, because now you're knocking down some of that upper mids. Stage was the nicest. And the upper details, again, this over the narrow bore one, doing it this way with a filter and tuning foam, still allowed the high-end registers, the high frequencies, upper mids, to come forward a bit more, and the stage open up a bit more. Hi-hats and snares still had full details. Drums sounded good again. The best out of all of the tunings. Guitar still had great balance and weight. So it was kind of like a, I was going to say the word compromise, but it's not a compromise at all. It's just basically fine-tuning this IM, and I'd love to see a future version of it again, with maybe the fourth thing and just using that and kind of doing a little bit more of this curve. So that's my impressions for the 4 different nozzles. So sound impressions are all now based on that last balanced nozzle that I put together. So reference longer nozzle, 200 level filter over the mesh, I would say, over the little screen, and a 5x5 millimeter medium density foam stuffed in the nozzle. So when I listen to stuff like, oh my god, are you ready for this? Nocturnum Opera 62, a Mademoiselle Art de Concerts number 1 by Francois Chaplin. It's piano. Piano sounds natural, full. You know, when I was listening to this, I'll first say something about sound. I didn't get any of your typical planar timbre that is normally associated with planars being this kind of really oversaturated amount of finesse and details. It didn't sound forced. It didn't sound unnatural. It didn't have some of that. It's hard to describe planar timbre, but there you go. It has a bit of a metallic unnaturalness sometimes. I didn't find that at all in a set. So when they're playing in this particular song, it's a full kind of spectrum of the keys, right? From the lowest notes of the keys to the highest notes of the keys. They all sounded correct, which is what I'm listening for. It had nice resonances, had nice overtones, and having the proper note weight of the keys down below, and the nice sharpness of the piano keys up top. So really well done. Switching gears here, Claire Cadillac by Malia. She was the lady that also sings with the group from Yellow, right? A little bit of EDM. And I love her vocal. She's got a smoking voice. And her vocals on this track are really well done. And there's some details with these little bells that ring. And they were super clear, and it does put a smile on your face, so I thought that was really well done. Now trying to listen to some strings. I'm really critiquing getting into the tonality of this thing. So, and I'm all over the place with music, right? I mean, some reviewers review on a certain set of libraries. I think when you're listening to gear, it should do music, period, right? Not set for one genre or the next genre, or one source or another source, right? Concerto for 2 cellos in G minor by Azure Polo. So has not only the cellos, but of course the violins that play in a higher bracket of frequency responses. And I'm listening to how well does it do the cellos in the lower notes, and how well does it reproduce violins with the higher notes, and it did it extremely well. So Lux Eterna by Metallica. It's like I said, I'm switching things up, right? Basically, I went through my playlist and whatever came up. I like this track. I want to hear how hard it hits, and so it does have hard bass hits, and it has lots of cymbal strikes, and there's a lot of information going on by the middle and the second half of this track. I was kind of actually wowed by the overall balance of how well the Azure Dragon played back this track. Full power presentation, even at higher volumes. It never got cagey or gritty. Now, and this was played off the Astle and Kern Con Max, and I'll talk about sources here after a bit. Where the Streets Have No Name, U2. So I listened to this track because at the very beginning there's some really low notes, some sub-bass notes that do step down. And you could hear that the Azure Dragon does play it. Is it the most prominent? No. Did it do it to my happy place? I'd say no. I think it could use a little bit more sub bass. And the vocals were also pretty good, but I think the vocals should have been a tad more forward in the mix, and that could have been my added filters in it, in my particular taste of tuning. If I would have not knocked down the upper mids, I probably would have had a little bit more of that, but overall it probably wouldn't have sounded as balanced. So just to give you a couple ideas in how it played back some certain tracks. I was pretty happy overall with everything I played through it, and again, listen to it for a couple more hours before I'm shooting this video here this morning. Now let's talk about sources for a sec. So the Astle and Kern Con Max got a shit ton of power. It is very clean. It is very analytical. It is very detailed. It is also very musical. It's a fantastic player. With the Azure Dragon, it absolutely brings out the most technical side of this IM and every other one that you put through it. So, and then I made a note under this that going through some other sources, the Dragon definitely benefits, I think, in my opinion, with a slightly warmer source. And even with the Astle and Kern, again, I didn't get too much of that, or none, really, of the planar timbre. It did it really, really well. This next generations of planar are really, I'd hate to admit it, but really coming into their own. And I'm excited to see what happens in the future. Talking what happened when I started using the Shanling MA. Now this is known to be, it's a very still resolving DAP, very warm, bassy, more analog sounding over the Con, of course. And I love the stage and the bass that this DAP puts out. With the Dragon, it just kind of makes the replay less trying just to play the notes, and more just playing the music. So it's a more, it does it in that way with this IM. It just basically smoothed out some of the rough edges, and it kind of just made the Azure Dragon kind of melt into the music a little bit more and lets you relax for bigger chill sessions. So if you're a detailed beast, you know, your sources are going to play a big part of anything you want to listen to. Now, I also tried it with an EPZ TP20 Pro little dongle, right? Not this one. This is the TP30. But it's like that. I really like those little EPZ dongles. I think they're best bang for the buck so far that I found. Now, the EPZ TP20 Pro, they're $42 dongle, so they're not expensive. Two things I'm listening for. One, is this going to power? How hard is this thing to drive? Can it power off a dongle? The answer to that is yes. Even on low gain, no problem. I think these things are pretty easy to drive as well. So low gain, I got to about 67 out of 100, and that was about all I can take for volume-wise. no problem driving this planar. So even a fairly inexpensive dongle, you're not going to have a problem. Would I power this thing directly off a phone if in a 3.5 jack? I don't think I would. But how did it sound with that little dongle? Well, that little dongle is less warm than the M8 for sure. The more forward in the mids. And again, no problem driving the Dragon at all. Do 4X, the little SimGot Cirrus Logic dongle as well. That thing sounds muffled in comparison to the TP20 Pro. It was definitely not a good pairing with the Dragon at all. It just, I don't know, it just, again, that's the best way I can describe it. It sounded muffled. EPZ TP50. I think this is the best value in dongles that I have heard to date. Not only is it fully featured, it sounds freaking amazing. It is very clean, very analytical with a hint of warmth, and was the absolute best pairing out of any of my sources. Desktop stack, DAPS, this little dongle, and this set of IMs happens to be the same color. It was a perfect combo of musical and technicalities. 2 thumbs up with the source. And again, little over $100 for this dongle. Fantastic. Highly recommended this little dongle as well. Now that was sources. Versus now the nice HCK F1 Pro. Again, same kind of shell, CNC aluminum magnesium shell, slightly smaller in design. Fitment wise, these little guys fit my ears better, significantly better, and that's just the shell shape. So again, fitment is subjective, but when these things go in, it goes into the right nozzle angle in my inner ear, and I'm not fooling or playing around with it. These are $100. These Azure Dragons are $200 to $250, but you can get them for $200. So the Azure Dragon comes with a modular cable, comes with swappable nozzles. The F1 Pro just comes with a simple cable, which is nice, but no fooling around of the nozzles. How did the two sound? So it's half its price. I'll first say that the Dragon is now my reference planar, just because it is overall smoother. In its replay, it's definitely less grainy and harsh. Those are tough words to use, but the F1 Pro still has a bit of to them, right? Where the Azure Dragon really is a nice, smooth, musical replay. So at twice the price, it is a step up in performance. The Dragon has nicer vocals, male and female. Instrumental is cleaner, and I said less artifacting, and that's because what I mean by that, I mean there was with the F1 Pro, you listen to it, and again, there's certain things about this particular planar that puts a bit of an edge on stuff, and it again, it almost sounds like it's trying too hard to reproduce it. It's trying to be too hyper realistic, where the Azure Dragon kind of smooths that out a little bit. It makes it sound more musical. So in the end, in conclusion, to finalize, make it finite at the end of my review here, you know, overall, TRN, you did well. You learned a lot from the conch. You're making something different, something funky, something off the beaten path. And I think this is the first planar that has these interchangeable nozzles. I couldn't come up with another one that actually has done it so far. And I really like the idea, and they actually work. And again, with the changing of the bore inside, TRN has figured that out. So I'm kind of excited to see where this goes in the future. These latest generations of planar seem to be getting better and better, and it's slowly turning me into a non-planar hater. I actually quite enjoy this IM and its tuning, again with my simple mods for me, inexpensively. Oh, one last thing that I want to mention in things. So we all know that planars do take equalizer extremely well. So, and I also did that with this. So off of the Shanling, using the Hibby app, MSEB, and the parametric EQ. So I just did a 5 dB boost from 34 hertz in the low bass shelf just to see how well the Dragon took an EQ. And happy to report, like a champ. That was the one thing that the F1 Pro did better than the Azure Dragon. It has more in the sub-bass boost. But overall, the Dragon was better balanced. So for me, that's a better trade-off. And using the EQ with the 5 dB PEQ boost, yeah, again, it took it like a champ. You can EQ the shit out of planars and not have it muck up its replay so too much. So if you want more bass boost, feel free to equalize this thing out. I think that's the only thing that I would do for my personal tastes. Just give it a little bit more bottom end. Other than that, sounds good. So just to summarize the TRN Azure Dragon for me and my experiences, this is their flagship planar IM, and as such, a couple things I would have liked to see. I would have liked to see a different cable, not their standard red chain cable. It would have been nice to see maybe a blue and black version of it. If you're putting something in flagship status, then it should be reflected in that, and especially at the $200 price point, which is, you know, almost double the competition as it is. Even the little details, you see that little top part, it would have been nice to have that finished off also in that blue. Just attention to detail. Again, if you're calling this flagship, make it so. Pricing, I think that is the biggest thing that has sound-wise, it can't be knocked. I mean, I think it does a fantastic job for sound quality-wise. Tunability, features, sets, packaging, all of that is fantastic. I think what's going to hold back this set more than anything else is the fact of its price point. At $200, it's again like double the nice HCK F1 Pro, certainly a lot more than the RT T10. So it's trying to compete with some other planars. The Fat Panda Max #2 is coming out, and it's $130, and again, this one it's $60 less than this one. So it's going to have a really stiff competition. Will it compete on sound quality wise? Yes, it will. But fighting for your dollar, that's going to be the big question, isn't it? This is Tone Deaf Monk. This is the review for the TRN Azure Dragon planar IM. Until next time.